thing is with this situation and how like we deal with extreme abuse is like for everyone who like reacted to that, all right, and everyone who like, because I double take when I saw that too, because when I saw the butt after that, I was like, oh man, I mean like it's an extreme abuse story. There's a time and place type of deal, right? Like that's all it is.
My timing was pretty off, but to my defense, all right. My concept of time is different than everyone else. Like 3 hours went by. So in my mind, I'm like, well, this story's already been talked about. It's done. It's over with. But here is the second part of it that no one's talking about, right? Even though it was only 3 hours, to me, it was like, oh, the story's already done and over with, you know?
So on your previous point, I didn't want to interrupt you. You were on a roll. You say that playing a character should not be done by content creators because content creators, they shouldn't lie to their fans. I know you were a big fan of Nikocado Avocado, and I don't think you believe that he's completely genuine with his audience on the camera. Do you?
I didn't say any of what you just said. I said, where did I say? Can someone roll this back that I said playing a character
Producer.
shouldn't do that?
Okay,
So this
how
is
do you
like
define- how do
this
you
is
define
like
playing a
Nux
character
doing the.
then?
We've all been on Twitter, right? You put out a tweet, you say something, and then someone says, "Okay, well, you said this, and what's wrong with this?" They argue against a point that you never made. He's doing this in real time. When did I say that?
I vaguely remember back when you said that Amouranth was lying to her fans when she didn't mention that she was married, that was bad.
I think
and
she
wrong for a
deliberately
content
mentioned that she was
creator.
single.
Yeah.
Even so,
even then,
Nikocado
would
Avocado
you
mentions he's dying in every video.
would you consider it more so? Would you consider it more so a scam or just like maybe misleading, right? Like because a scam is like you don't get the product you desire, but if you're buying like pics or I guess the big. Go ahead.
I just feel like, you know, when you're playing a character, it's over the top obvious, right? You're using an example of Nick Avocado, like clearly he's playing a character, right? Is that? But I don't think many people that watched Amouranth thought to themselves, "Oh, she's taken not just a boyfriend, but a husband." Like that's a whole nother layer, right? So I think that's a little different.
And I agree completely. I totally see what you're saying too, by the way, and I completely understand. I feel like just for a lot of people, it just doesn't really matter, I guess.
I think it's like
when I put out that tweet,
shell. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say when I put out that tweet, everybody came for me. Everyone. It was so insane. I had these far right people, these far left people, every person in the Twitch
the world
community.
For a minute.
Yeah.
Dude, I did. Maybe I should start.
You can be a martyr, Keem.
Maybe
you can bring
Biden,
us all close.
Maybe Biden and Putin want to give their takes and come together finally. Yeah, it was just it was wild. You know, Keffels literally called me a pedophile. I mean, there was some wild stuff. Jake Lucky was saying I was victim blaming, which that was one of the weird responses. And you know how I was mentioned how people do this on Twitter? Mm-hmm. People read my thread and they were like, "Oh, will you support her abusive husband?" What? Like how is that? How did you grasp that from what I'm saying? So there was a lot of that. It was absolutely insane, unfair. And I feel like as this story starts coming out a little bit more and more and more, you know, I think people will be more accepting to my take as opposed to wanting me deplatformed because I even suggested that she scammed her fans by lying to them.
I mean, again, I don't think it's what you said that was taken as wrong. It was more of a lost the forest for the trees, like tone deaf response. I don't think anyone disagrees inherently with the logic you were saying.
Yeah.
What do you mean tone deaf?
So,
like, here you have a story about a girl who was being abused by her husband, and you're like, well, she lied to her fans. It's like, I feel like people covered.
No, I'm sorry. I did a whole video about how she was abused by her husband before I even made those tweets.
Saw the tweet. People just saw the tweet. They didn't see the video.
I think
on Twitter they just saw the tweet.
Okay, exactly. But what you just said as fact, all right, isn't fact. That's perception. Mm-hmm. So let's try to live in reality for a second here. So was I actually tone deaf, or was the perception that I was tone deaf?
I said it appears tone deaf.
Here's the problem with the tone deaf stuff, okay? Like, here's the real, like, issue, right? Like, okay, so let's imagine you're not watching anything anywhere, right? Like, you just fired up Twitter, you're not on Snapchat, you're not on it.
I understand, Muta, but what you're asking for is like one opinion. You want the internet to have one opinion, one take.
Right.
And look, nobody was covering the fact that she has a husband. She's been lying. She's been telling her fans she's single. No one was covering that. And I get it. I get it. No
wait
one.
when she's safe and free.
I get it. There's so many. She was safe. There was.
I mean, I don't know. She's taking like an indefinite break. There's in the last couple of days, she's like streamed around, like cops are over, like she's getting wellness checked. It's like
Well,
now.
yeah,
She streamed her
wellness
horses
is
yesterday, which was pretty
fluid.
cool.
Oh,
Yeah, I think unless I made that up, I don't know.
I guess I lost my train of thought now. But yeah, like someone's got to say it. I understand that, like, you know, optics are very important to most creators. Like, you know, they're worried how people will perceive their words or whatever. I just think something and then I tweet it. I don't know. I don't think there's too many of me left.
What do you think about her relationship, her husband? I mean, you can have a husband but not have any sort of romantic like involvement with him whatsoever. It could be more like a Britney Spears conservatorship type situation. That's kind of how I saw it. That's why it just kind of flew over my head. I was like, she has a husband, all right. And then you know, I don't really feel like they were that in love.
I think the bigger issue is that she's in this horrible abusive thing, right?
That is the main issue.
And I don't want me defending my point like she scammed her fans to make it seem like that is the issue, right? The issue is the main issue clearly is the abuse thing. But nobody's talking about the fact that she scammed her fans. Like that.
well,
that
I
was,
would say like optically, okay, like optically, if you had mentioned that, okay, if you didn't have the butt, like if you removed everything from like the butt and then everything afterwards and waited until the situation was like less fluid, I don't know, like a month down the road when everything was like cleared and everything, it could be a valid point to obviously bring up and people be like, yeah, let's kind of think about that. Because right now we're doing a lot of what ifs, you know, like we don't even know if that relationship, like how bad it really was. Because we're not into it. We don't even know, like, hey, was she actually being forced into doing this? Because, yeah, you're right. Personal accountability is a thing. But being in relationships and being vulnerable to another person, that can really, like, fuck you up. You know what I mean? Like, when somebody is that entangled into your personal life, your finances, at that point, it's not easy to just, like, get up, leave, turn on a camera and be like, hey, guys, I'm being, like, abused. I got to run away. When your whole life is tangled up with another entity, it's like, okay, you're like stuck there, and then like eventually you get to the breaking point. And when I saw Amouranth like break down, that was like the breaking point. The reason why like I tended to be on her side at that moment is like being in similar situations, like where you're spending like months with somebody completely unhappy, and then you do get to your breaking point. It's like it all comes out at once, you know. It's not like a fucking calculated response or like a calculated plan of action, right? So that's what it came to me, and that's why I was like, oh shit, this is like really, really real.
Yeah, it's really real. And of course you have to be on her side in that situation. Another point that I brought up in my Twitter thread is that Amouranth has been labeled as like a genius businesswoman. Like she has got credit from the entire Twitch community, companies, whatnot. I've seen it for years that how she's just a hard worker and an absolute like genius businesswoman. But in the reveal, it seemed like the husband was making all the decisions and making her work, making her do 24-hour streams, making the moves. She even said something along the lines that the husband made her stream to take advantage of the hot tub meta and all this other stuff. So like that's a whole nother thing where, you know, people were giving her all the credit, but it seems like the abusive husband was the one making the moves.
I read that more as of like he was like a producer thing. I don't know. I mean, she could have been doing whatever she wanted.
I got the same impression that Keem did, but this again, I feel like it looks like it's tone deaf to talk about to bring that up now.
Yeah, like
that's I think the main
right now should not be the focus
that,
on like, hey, let's talk about her like business moves. We'll wait until the situation is less fluid and like, hey, we can start to look into these things this time. Because right now I'm not like I'm worried about like fucking her and her guy and like just how long this has been going on versus like was she really a smart businesswoman? Like, that's not cross. That's those wires aren't connecting for me at the moment. You know, like that's.
I don't really
I
care.
think that's the real difference, right? Like, obviously, in my mind, like I'm so. I guess you could say. I like to think that when you're in this echelon of like content creation, everyone knows what they're doing, right? Like off platform, you know what you're doing. Caleb knows what he's next. I know what I'm doing. Everyone is like a pretty good businessman. When I was hearing like Amaranth's like girl boss businessman, even like a year or businesswoman, even like a year or 2 years ago, I was like, everyone in that situation fucking knows what they're doing. You have to be a fucking idiot to not know what you're doing. But yeah, when her
Enter
like
Steve will do it.
yeah.